effective class on how this piece works.
At Karate for Mental Health CIC, the mission is simple but powerful. To use the discipline, confidence and community of karate to support people living with disabilities, mental health challenges, and those from disadvantaged backgrounds. For your support, Karate for Mental Health provides free karate training, helping individuals grow stronger, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Karate for Mental Health now offers workshops, courses, and exclusive merchandise, and every purchase directly funds these life-changing projects. Join the mission, make an impact. Enjoy 15% of your purchases with the code AAB15. Whether you are passionate about mental health, martial arts, or simply want to make a difference, your support helps building people up. One kick, one class, one moment at a time. Visit Karate for Mental Health CIC, CEO UK, gear up, get involved, and help change lives. Welcome to another episode of Anxious Black Belt, podcast that focuses on mental health, karate, and everything in between. Today we've got a returning guest, Che Jagger from a Goju Karate Center in South Africa. Always a pleasure to chat to Che. He's got an amazing YouTube channel and a club, so if you want to check that out, the card above. Che, how are you?
I'm all right, thank you. Thanks for having us back on. And yeah, it's always a privilege and a pleasure to hook up and to link up.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure for me to chat with you and exchange little messages. Not very often, but we're staying in touch outside of a podcast and karate world as well. So it's always nice to have a message from you. You cooking something, doing something on the grill, and plants.
Plants, cooking, doing something. I don't get to do active walking and podcasts like you do from time to time. I don't think I have the tech savvy to walk around and to do that simultaneously. I take my hat off to you for making use of every opportunity. Especially to share your thoughts. Your thoughts sometimes they resonate in so many ways. And I think there's a large community of people out there who are going, yeah, I agree with that. I can see the logic there. So, yeah.
Thank you. It doesn't seem like that online because I've recently got more returning trolls. I think that's the
of course.
Price of the success. But yeah, I find interesting and liberating for me to share the knowledge and my thoughts. Some correct, some not correct, but it always sparks up some conversation. So it gives me a chance to learn from other people like yourself. You kindly usually comment on some of my stuff with a very thoughtful answers. So it is nice for me to have a feedback from people if I'm on the right track with something or I need to rejig my thinking. And I think that's important in martial arts and life, to be able to have somebody looking from the outside of your bubble and give you a feedback.
Yeah, I see a lot of this. It's a gripe of mine as well that there's so many martial arts people out there who are so obsessed about keeping their little bubbles intact. And if you're in this bubble, you can't go to that bubble and vice versa. And I find it incredibly disheartening for people wanting to do martial arts and explore martial arts to be confined to their bubble only. And you hear things like that's wrong rather than that's different. We don't do it that way. The reason we do it this way is for this reason. There's just this very old, and I want to say old-fashioned way, because for many people it is really old-fashioned to a certain degree in the history of karate in particular, of my sensei did it that way and his sensei did it that way and sometimes when you go right back to the beginning, you suddenly realize, but hold on, the original guys didn't do that at all. It was not on their agenda. It was one of the things that they actually didn't like about the world that they were in. They wanted to work together. They wanted to share information. They wanted to be proactive with one another. And I honestly think that it's part of the martial arts world that leaves us, with a bit of egg on our face, because we sometimes we can't just put down like our little trinkety sword and shield on our agenda and just sit and talk. And when we talk, that dialogue creates different opinions, and those different opinions create people's change in comfort and change in perception, and therefore we have growth, because at some point it's growth that we're all after.
Yeah, it's kind of a fake tradition, right? We are our system. I think the Shotokan is the biggest example of this, because Funakoshi was promoting that karate shouldn't be exclusive, should be to everybody. He's been learning from different teachers. He's been sending students to other teachers, but in some point his students decided, oh, Shotokan is our lineage, we're gonna be protecting it, and everybody's doing what my teacher was doing, and this is the only way correct. And now I don't know if you've seen, but the English Karate Federation started to sending letters to people that, oh, you cannot train with anybody else. The WKF said that it's only our organization, you cannot train outside, which it seems to be that the WKF dropped that limitations a few years ago, but people within the UK trying to limit other people to where they're able to train and stuff like that. And actually, it's nice to see that there is a huge pushback. And I think people mostly now are, you don't own us, we pay you for a service. We can go and train wherever we want, right? And the other point,
yeah,
another point to it is that it seems to be that nowadays people stop being able to have a conversation. I might not agree with you about your karate, but that doesn't stop us being friends. We just got two unique viewpoints on it, and we can talk about it without being aggressive, without being abusive. It seems to be that skills of communication is lost, maybe due to the short and very driven out of emotions communications we do through the writing, right?
I think so. I think some of this tends to lend itself to the idea that sometimes karate instructors in their own little dojos, the sensei in the dojo is like the highest. He's the king, and nobody may look. And there is a time and a place for the sensei to be. We're not doing it this way or that way because this is what we need to do for a base level. But I'm very green with envy of some of the other nations out there, and I see what happens in England, and I see sometimes in Australia and in New Zealand, and even to a degree outsiders in Okinawa promoting seminars and inviting everybody. You're all welcome. Just come train, and you have these fantastic, awesome seminars, and that means that, like you say, you can have two people with different opinions kind of meeting somewhere in the middle, having a conversation and having a discussion, and even possibly teaching one another's students and going, this is different. Let's see what we can take from one another and make ourselves better by that interaction. And I see a lot of this happening in small little pockets, but in some bigger groups, there is so much bravado from the sensei and so much fear of loss of face that they might not have an answer or that their answer might not be the same, that they're immediately shutting down everybody and saying, no, that doesn't work. And it's difficult because sometimes the person at the very top is the person making these statements, and they're holding on dearly to control their students. And I think they forget, first and foremost, the greatest percentage of people doing martial art, in particular karate do, are not Japanese.
Yeah.
And so we cannot have this underlying Japanese base like understanding of the world if the people we deal with, the environment we live in, the countries we live in, don't have the same underlying culture. And if you don't have that underlying culture, we can try and show some of it. But walking into the dojo should not be the same as walking and suddenly crossing, even though I tell my children this, when you step onto the tatami, we leave South Africa and we're now in Okinawa. But the idea is that, it's an impossibility. We can take a few key ideas and say, all right, these are the bits of the culture that we're going to keep, and this is the bits of the teaching we're going to keep. But we're gonna look at it through the lens of being South African or English, or being a European person, or being a person from South America, because every person's difference of socioeconomics dictates a different way of interpreting, and then their age. 5-year-olds interpret things radically different to 55-year-olds.
For sure. Yeah, but there's a kind of notion that at least from when I was in Poland and some people in UK, that they trying to be more Japanese than Japanese people, right? Taking everything to extreme, which having friends, Japanese friends, they're like, oh, why are you keeping those traditions? Nobody in Japan does it. They rather go to McDonald's than to traditional Japanese restaurant, or the dojo. They prefer kickboxing instead of a very traditional Okinawan karate. Some do, some don't, right? But I think there's across the globe some similar values that can be introduced into a dojo, not necessarily in Japanese way, right? We don't need to bow, we can shake hands, but the meaning of the respect is the same, right? So have that freedom to do whatever fits your students, whatever fits your agenda and how you feel about the training and approach, and just make it your own, and have fun and let other people live and doing the different stuff.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I agree. In my dojo, we give people the option, but like typically the other day we have an issue with our teenagers, and the teenagers get on top of one another and they're all hugging and melting into one another, literally. And I'm like, hold on, I'm getting tired of seeing this every time I arrive. And I walk up to the dojo to teach your class, and now I've got all these young kids literally hanging on one another. And I'm like, okay, enough of this now. So for the next few years, you will come to the dojo and you will greet with a fist pump, or you'll greet with a bow, or you'll shake hands, or you'll just say, how's it, or whatever. And you have that right. And you've got to learn that you can't just run up and hug everybody. Because some of these kids are a little bit crazy. And then the kids come to me and they go, Sensei, how would you like to be greeted? And I'm like, ideally, because I'm the grumpy old man in the dojo, I like to have a bow. All right. If you're lucky, I'll give you a fist pump. I don't want to be hugged by any of you anymore. And they're like, but why? And I'm like, because you're attacking me when you hug me. And they laugh. And, I think bringing a sense of humor into some of it, playing that sense of humor is also important. I think having fun in the dojo is important.
Yeah.
I've noticed that even in my own teaching, sometimes I get a little bit too serious, and I gotta let go and say, all right, well, we've had 6 classes where it's been a torture chamber. Now we've got to have 2 classes where everybody lets their hair down, and the youngsters can have fun, or the adults can have a bit of fun, do something different. So
yeah, I definitely agree with you. We do a lot of fun as well. Good example is yesterday, one of our friends, it's really cold in our dojo at the moment before the heat has kicked in. So wearing a hat, and he's a little Chinese person, so we've been doing a bit of a headlocks and stuff, and his hat was all mangled, so he looked like a character from Jackie Chan, Drunken Master style. So we quickly took the little bottle of floor cleaner. So he was wandering around pretending that he's drunk. We took some pictures. So you need to be relaxed in your strictness, if that's making sense. You need to be fine balance. We just say, just don't be a dick, right? Do whatever you want, but don't be a dick on a class, and then everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah, no, I think when you get it right, and we have a trend in our dojo to have second dojo, and that where from time to time, especially the adult students, okay, we're gonna I bought a cake today. We're going to have cake and coffee halfway through class. And like halfway through class, that's it. We stop. Everybody has a slice of cake. Everybody has a cup of coffee or something, and we get to talk. Or we're having a barbecue and everybody's coming over. Everybody's relaxing. Some of the guys will throw down a couple of beers. A couple of people will have a glass of wine. But everybody lets their hair down and they literally can talk to one another, because in a world where everything is digital and a world where everybody's so busy doing this, that ability to suddenly sit and to have a conversation is super important. And we try and do it as well with the kids from time to time. Sit down in the class, tell me about your day, go from student to student. How was your day? What happened at school? Oh, I'm sorry to hear about your pet hamster that got sick. You got to answer all the questions. But I think for people, that moment, it makes them the center of the universe. The sensei is asking me a question, and it's not a karate question. And it helps.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed that, but I've got a couple of younger people coming in. I done a mistake, and I'm starting to teach kids in January, and so it's gonna be probably more of it. But I've noticed that the groups, not only karate, but all the groups now took a job of educating younger students how it was before COVID. Because, like, for example, my daughter, she had a lot of problems with kind of getting on with people in a larger groups and finding their own space within it, because she was brought up, most of their early years were in lockdown and post-lockdown. And I think it is kind of a distorted perception of the human interactions. Everything is done through the internet, social media, and stuff like that. And the young people getting lost when somebody just talks to them. So I think the old grumpy men like us have this important mission of reintroducing some of the values of we can just talk, and it's okay.
Yeah, I think that we see something similar. We're spending a lot of time trying to navigate and create ways to get students to stop arriving, let's say, before their class with their cell phone. And like I said, they're constantly doing this. They're on their phone. And so we now are starting to say to the parents, listen, the dojo, for all intents purposes, is a no phone zone. We don't want phones at the dojo. We don't want the kids with phones. And if they are using a phone because they have to catch an Uber or a Bolt or a taxi or something, that's fine. But we're not allowing them to sit there and to vegetate on their phone and engage with the world through a technological device. So we bought a chess set for the kids, and we started saying, right, when you get to the dojo, let's see who's the chess champions. And there's a big chess set, and you can play team chess. You can do whatever. It's a garden set that's outside the front door of the dojo, and the kids are playing. And we will run through. We're going into our Christmas period, so the dojo has its own kind of weird Christmas traditions. And so a grumpy sensei Grinch will emerge, and the Grinch sensei will read stories about Christmas, and there's all the little toys in the dojo moving around every couple of days, watching. We've got these naughty elves who are watching, who are Santa's helpers. We have the Grinch who's there, who's trying to ruin everything. We have a Gruffalo, it's another little character who's there. He's the alter ego of the Krampus,
Yeah.
the child-friendly version. And slowly the Christmas trees arrive, and then the lights, and then eventually at some point, like, Christmas explodes inside our dojo. And then the kids come, and some of the kids, the most powerful thing for them is coming and not hearing somebody on YouTube reading them a story, but actually listening to sensei read a story, and then we do class. And I think that is that whole idea of opening up, that people can have these interactions and conversations. It's one of the reasons I think my dojo did really well through COVID, was, besides for setting up YouTube, was the idea that we were constantly trying to find ways to bring people in. We went and we trained in the park, which is about 2 kilometers away, not even about a kilometer from our main dojo, open air. We had people 10, 15 meters apart at the beginning with masks on, but everybody was there and there was still this ability to have conversations. So we try to kind of stop that problem, but we're seeing more and more people who they just want to interact through a computer. And I have people who are involved at the university who go, these young students, they'd rather do class via a screen while they're in the comfort of their home. And so they're missing the entire social interaction of what it is to be at university. And I'm going, university was the best time of my life. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I couldn't wait to get there in the morning. And I was always reluctant to come home in the evening because I was having such a good time. And yeah, I didn't have any extra years of social study, as I call it. I did my degree in allocated amount of time, but you know, I had a great time while I was there, and I made friends while I was there, and I found people who were like-minded and people I could engage with. And I see some of the youngsters. It's just like, nah, I just want to get this so I can get a job. And then it's like, well, guess what? When you get a job, you're going to have to engage with people anyway, because that's important. And they're just not going to have those communication skills.
Make gifting easy with Benson and Clegg. Handcrafted cufflinks, luxury accessories, and a proper British style. Trusted since the 1930s by royalty. Get 15% off with code KARATE15, exclusively for Anxious Black Belt podcast listeners. Shop now at bensonandclegg.com. Yeah, but on the other side, I think that people now starting to kind of go back to, I see more, and we talked just before the starting recording that, you know, your channel dropped down, my views dropped down. I think people, like you said, is saturation of content, and there is lots of just AI generated content now, which I think people getting tired of. And it seems to be that people are spending less time in front of the device, maybe long content towards the short content, but maybe they're just going out and doing stuff. So that's why we've got a drop or something change in the algorithm, because my views dropped down from a couple of thousands on a long form to barely 100, 200. I don't know how it's on your end, but
I know Zoe's been producing content reasonably regularly. I haven't produced any content of late. And I honestly, I think I've put enough content out there to cover our curriculum and our syllabus to the point that if somebody wants to know what we're kind of about, they go in. And now I know, like, Zoe's looking at me and going, you know, all that content we filmed in COVID where you were wearing a mask and Brian was wearing a mask, it's time to refilm all of that. So when I get round to hopefully spending time and having Brian at my disposal again, that we can work, then the two of us might spend a couple of weeks redoing some of the early videos. But I suspect that we're not going to have the same kind of traction. And I think you're right. The general sense of it is that people don't have the ability to watch a 40-minute or 30-minute effective class on how this piece works. But I do think as a raw database for people to have access to content, they can arrive in that section. And because Zoe is so meticulous on the editing and creating chapters and bits and pieces, people can go into a video and go, oh, okay, I'll just skip ahead to here, I'll skip ahead to there. And I think that's, you know, got to look at what we want from our YouTube. And in that case, I think our raw content is literally trying to create the content for, first and foremost, our own students to have access to, so that they can prepare themselves in their own capacity, because the world has moved from the books that are all on the shelf and the magazines, which were the only source of information when I was a child, to videos and then to DVDs. And now it's all on YouTube. So it gives them that access, because I don't think any of them have DVD players anymore. So my collection of DVDs are kind of useless, as well as the VHS tapes that I have from the dark ages of karate. So yeah, but I think that's the one part of this big YouTube thing. And then the other thing was the live streams. I try and use live streams. I keep saying to Zoe, if you want to mark your preparation to your next grading, do it via live streams. Turn the comments off, or like my students have become aware. I go, I can't see you. I'm not wearing my glasses. My glasses might be hanging right there, but I'm not interested in your comments. I'm just glad that you're checking in with me. And then afterwards, I'd run through and check everybody's comments. And if there were trolls, I would have missed them anyway. Most of the time, they would have left 10 minutes later. But the live streams kept us honest, or kept me honest in trying to prepare for grading in Okinawa, so that I would be physically strong and mentally prepared, and that I'd taken some time and invested time in what I was doing. So I think as creators, we've got to figure out why we're doing what we're doing, what's its purpose. And then like this creation of dialogue is fantastic because it helps people. And this is very much more for the more serious practitioner, even the serious hobbyist who wants to know a little bit more, listening into conversations between karate practitioners who are maybe a higher grade. And then for the senior senseis who are above us, it's them listening in to reprimand us later, maybe, for what got said.
Yeah, I do disagree on one thing with you. I think the books are still usable, and I think there is a lot of people who still love the book. I take book every time over a ebook. I just prefer to read the pages that are lay in my hands, and I can feel them, and I can flip it's something really good in that. And I think that there's lots of people still, and I think there's a growing trend of people going back to like a nostalgia when we can grab the book and enjoy it with the coffee.
Yes. Oh, no, I see a lot of people who are in that same vein. I've got students who come in on a regular basis and they troll through what's on the shelves behind me looking for content. And then every now and then they'll come and they'll go, have you got anything on this? Or have you got anything on that? And I'm like, I think so. And then we go and find something. And I remember looking and seeing something in a book here, or seeing this. And they look at me a little bit perplexed and bewildered. And they're like, but Sensei, you say you've never read all of these books or any of these books. I'm like, no, I read most of them when I was, like looking at the contents and that. So I've got an idea of what's there. But when I really need to sit down and dig deep, I like books. And for more interaction from people, I enjoy reading forums from time to time. So I'll go onto some of the forums, but there's so much fighting and like animosity between various people about who said what said, it's when they said it, and who's legit and who's not. And I'm like, oh, you kind of got to filter all of that stuff out. So I think that requires a different kind of mindset. Especially if you're looking for pieces of detailed information about people. But this interaction, I think, is more valuable. We had wonderful experience of having Sensei Patrick McCarthy, Hanshi McCarthy, on a podcast, and asking him how would he go about getting to Okinawa, etc. And it turned out into 3 long videos with lots of information, and so much information that we eventually were like, okay, we'll have to break it down and we'll have to clean it up a lot, because there were so many anecdotal points that he went down those little wormholes, which was fantastic.
Oh, that's great. I've seen you had a Tuari as well recently, doing the New Zealand's fighting arts with the little club or whatever it's called.
Yeah, you did that with Zoe. They interact on, I would say, they were working towards once a week, training together, doing a little bit of kobudo and touching sides with different things. And then afterwards, and later in the morning, Tuari and myself would have conversation online and just talk, and those moments are not really recorded, but that's that ability to have those private conversations and to build those friendships, to network, so that at a later point in time, we can all lean on each other when we need to, and
Hmm.
hopefully glean a whole chunk of knowledge from everybody else, and then there's a better society for us.
Yeah, I'm chatting quite often as well with Tuari. Yeah, he's a really nice guy. I know he's very busy now with the Okinawan trip and teaching in Okinawa and all the projects in
What a
Australia
privilege.
trip. Yeah, yeah. He just needs to be less humble about what he does, in my opinion. Have
No,
you?
no, he's
Yeah, go on.
far away, Les. Sorry.
Have you been thinking about writing everything you recorded into a format of a book?
I have not, but Zoe has. She's she has been um, she's been talking to me about creating a book and putting it down on paper for a couple of years, and I think the reason it doesn't happen is that most people don't understand my backstory. So I am very typical attention deficit type child, hyperactive, but I'm also dyslexic. And
Mm,
so writing and the command of the English language were probably my weakest things. So if I had to pull out my school reports from primary school, yeah, even though I speak English first language and I speak Afrikaans second language, sometimes it might appear that I speak like a foreigner because I switch the tenses around and I do all the wrong things as somebody who's literally grown up English speaking.
mhm,
And so my command of the language is really bad, and my ability to transfer that thought into words is really, really difficult. Zoe, on the other hand, is fantastic. She's a naturally gifted writer, she's a wordsmith. And so she is literally going to have to translate what I say into words that make sense, because sometimes it just goes here and then it goes there and then it goes back there. So it's something that's on her radar and that she's very, very keen to get done. Um, I'm, I just look and I'm like, I don't know if I'm good enough to produce anything like that in terms of uh, written, documented, like a book or I really like the idea of like journals, but we
mhm,
don't really have martial arts journals like they have for other um, real academia.
mhm.
Um, but I know she has published had work published, but I just yeah I'm good at the training stuff.
It's the same for me. So for me, English is not the first language, but I am dyslexic in Polish as well, and I have got the same scattered mind. And that's why my wife is doing my editing. So I write 15 minutes a day. Now I have a long break, but um, write something and then she's correcting it because we tried to get other people to correct my thing and nobody understand what I mean because it's Pinglish, so Polish and English.
Yes, in
Plus,
English. Yep.
plus is about martial arts. So if you don't have a martial arts background and you haven't trained with me, you have no clue what I mean. So that's why it
Yeah.
takes so long. My now book is nearly ready to publish. She formatted. She needs to just go and do the finest correction of the grammar, but it's only a year and a half delayed. So, so
But
because she's so busy with her work that it's just no chance to have a look on my silly stuff.
I'm amazed at Sensei Patrick McCarthy at the
Mm,
sheer volume of information that he has managed to collect, collate, um, edit, and formulate into text, and to present these bits of history, etc., and then to be constantly producing volume after volume of book of printed information and putting it out there and saying, all right, here is something from this on the topic of kobudo,
mm,
karate, of history, etc. And you got to take your hat off to people who have this ability to put out information. Go back to the nostalgia. Everybody will books survive long periods. I've got books
Mm-hmm.
sitting in a cupboard that are over 100 years old, and they are that information that's in there. It's there. It can't be taken away. It can't be cleared by Google or deleted or whatever. It's a physical book,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's I think anybody who gets around to doing what you've done, and I think you've got the formula, which is do a little bit every day, get somebody who understands the language that you use, the dialogue that you use, understands the martial art and the way we use that language in our art, and then um, get somebody, a third party, to just go through and check all the grammar at some point, and not to trust
Mm.
Google to do it all. I've come across a couple of places where there you find information and they've got spelling mistakes, and you could see they've probably used like Word as their
Mm-hmm.
base document, and they've made a correction on one word, but it hasn't auto-corrected through the entire document.
Yeah.
And and that's typical of anything that is spelt in Japanese that you're now trying to add to your dictionary.
Mm.
So I see this a couple of times when I look at a couple of books and I see the misspelling of names and stuff. And I think that's the critical part for from the historical side. And then the only other thing I've ever come across, and I was saying to one of my students who brought me a spelling mistake in a book, I said to him, I show you a book where they put in images, and it is very clear that they dropped an image over a table, and parts of the table have been lost because they're under the image, and whoever did the editing, not knowing the overall content,
Mm-hmm.
missed that out. And I remember when I pointed it out to the author was like, "Are you sure?" And I said to him, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Hold on. Here's the actual translation here. Here's the photo of that board that you're talking about in that dojo." And oh, and I don't know how many thousand books had been printed with that mistake, and it hadn't been picked up by somebody else or hadn't been brought up, maybe.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's always. I think proofreads are essential for us as martial artists.
Yeah, for sure. It makes the life easier because I'm making so many mistakes. It's just, you're rushing, you're thinking about this, but in my head already next chapter is being created. So it's just like, it's a mishmash of thoughts and written language and ideas and so on. So it is a difficult job, and easily mistakes creep in, not on purpose, just by being rushed or whatever, distracted.
I, I you know, I'm a student of Sensei Terry Chinen in many ways, and if there are a few books in my library that I've read from cover to cover multiple times, it will be anything that came from Sensei Chinen. And I know that his last bits of published work, when you read the forwards and the thanks and everything else, a lot of acknowledgement goes to the people behind the scenes
Mm,
who have to take and collect this vast amount of knowledge and try and put it together and collate it. And I know that his like pretty much his last bit of writing was that a
mm,
whole team had to put it together, and like it was really really difficult for them.
mm,
But they somehow pulled it together because I think being this absolute creative genius, his brain was going in so many places, and I think that is the difficulty is people with that similar kind of brain type where your brain you're thinking about one thing but you're doing another thing, and
mm.
then you're halfway through this and you're already onto this point here. I think that's super super difficult.
Yeah, that's what is one of my problems on the seminars and workshops. I look like people who I'm teaching around, like Ian Abernathy or Christian Vedevard or John Teachin, who are a very plan driven.
Yeah.
Everything is in place. I'm going there. It's like, oh fuck, it's like all scattered around the million places and chaos. I cannot really express myself what I'm thinking about and what I want the people to do. But some people enjoy that kind of way. So but I'm doing more conscious effort to kind of formalize my seminars into digestible form instead of being a pure chaos.
I have moments where I rely very heavily on the pure chaos of my brain, because I think it is very unsettling for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I did a seminar once and I walked in and I said, okay, what do you want from me? And they went, you didn't prep anything? I was like,
Mm-hmm.
no, what do you want? Ask and let's see what we can do. And they just looked at me like dumbfounded. A certain amount of arrogance and a certain amount of confidence meshed together with this hectic brain, and then having one fundamental like planning
Mm.
protocol that I ran through, and that was it. And we made a seminar and that, but yeah, I don't think I was ever called back to those guys to do a seminar because I think it was a little bit too far out. They didn't like the fact that it was totally unplanned. And then when necessity dictates what has to happen, having a planned seminar, um, rudimentary planning. We did a dojo gashku a couple of weeks ago, and it was session one. We start with the babies. I teach the babies syllabus.
Mm-hmm.
Session two, I moved to the yellow belt and then orange, and then we went through every belt until we got to the end of the syllabus, and I got to around about second dan level, and
Mm-hmm.
the students, and it was just one content. It was just bunkai of their key grading kata, and then we again and again and again, and parents just looking and going, how do you know all this stuff? And like, but that's why we practice. We practice, but you came up with different variations. Like, that's why we practice. That's why we that's why I've been doing this for nearly 50 years. It's why we practice. So
Amazing. Yeah, but it stays. It seems to be that it's getting engraved in your brain via practice instead of thinking about it, right? So it is sometimes difficult to express it, but it's easier to show it, if that makes sense. Easier to show it than to describe it.
Absolutely, 100%. I did an exercise once out of, and again, this crazy brain. I have written in a book where I wanted to formulate and formalize my thinking a little bit. I had a journal for a little while, and I'd written the attack and defense protocols for a drill and for bunkai. And I went into the dojo and I got the whiteboard and I drew a line down the middle. And one side I wrote attacker, other side defender, and I wrote down what I had in my book. And I wrote down, I think it was 3 or 4 sets, so combinations of 3 or 4 things. And it's like, okay, there you go. That's the class. Decipher that. And the students just looked at me and they were like, and they sat, and then they slowly, one or two of them were like, okay, that first piece is this, and they sort of, and the next, okay, so that piece must fit on, and it's Rogerian thought is to sit back and to watch and to see what happens when they interact, and to record their interaction. And what I did was I sat with the dechis at the, I can't remember if Zoe was the dechi or if it was the dechi before, if it was Brian, and I said, watch what they come up with. Look at all the variations that are going to be created by their own personal interpretation of something that is written down as basic words. And they just were like, and I must have seen 30 or 40 different ideas in the course of 2 days of karate, with people just trying to decipher those 4 combinations. Then afterwards, they asked me to show them, and I showed them, and they were like, ours didn't look anything like yours. And I was like, doesn't matter. You came to something that kind of worked, and that's the important part. So
yeah, I'm a big fan of a personal expression of karate, and I think actually I was recording yesterday podcast, which is gonna go on Tuesday about it. That people need to be encouraged to find their own ways. It's that shuhari concept, right? So
Yes.
First you copying, then you're creating your own variations, and then you go to be your own legitimate stylist within the group. So you do your
Yeah.
own personal expression of your martial arts, because we all different, right? Or think different,
Yeah.
move different, have a different perception. So it is important to encourage students to find their own ways.
I agree with that in so many fundamental ways because I remember the first time I heard of Shuhari in being questioned about it was with Sensei Ronnie Kluger, and I looked and I was like, I don't know what this is about. And then he explained it, and it's a key principle, and it's in my book. Please go and have a look. And took the book and read it, and I was like, okay. I looked around inside, and I was like, hold on, I've got another book that talks about this. Oh, okay, here it is again, and there's a whole bunch of these key concepts, and I hadn't bothered learning the Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of concentrated on what's important to me, which is the English. You need to copy, you need to be analytical, you need to break it apart and analyze everything that you're doing. And then you need to, through training, kind of make it work for you
Mm-hmm.
based on your size, your shape, your strengths, your weaknesses. Um, and then, you know, I'd overlap other things on top of that. So often I would do SWOT analysis on what we were doing in sport karate, and I'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and the analytics are all the same. You know, you copy a drill, we analyze the drill, we break it apart, we try and find better ways to make it work. We apply a SWOT analysis at that point. We internalize it. We have a look. We go to a competition. It worked or it didn't work. We look at the success to failure rate, and we
Mm-hmm.
do another SWOT analysis after in our debriefing. And all this analytics basically gets us to the point where we go, if I'm going to be involved in this, I've got this skill, this skill, this skill. These are how I'm going to use them. And that's the nuts and bolts. But that shuhari is like very, very important. And I think a lot of students now, I spend a lot of time teaching it on a regular basis, just so students understand you copy my kata the way it's supposed to look for grading.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you get a little bit older and it looks a little different because you've got a different life experience, that's okay as long as it's within a certain amount of the framework. But if you go radically different, well, then we're going to have a little bit of a problem because at some point that might be something that's questionable, especially in terms of grading.
Mm-hmm.
A senior here in South Africa did the kata superumpe, and he took out a whole bunch of the shikodachis
Mm-hmm.
and he put cat stance and zen kutsudachi in, and he changed the kata totally. And he did this at an event, and I went to him afterwards and I said to him, Sensei, what's going on? Is this like something new? Is this something you got? He said, no, I've hurt my knee. I
Mm.
can't bend it. I can't go into shikodachi anymore. It's like really, really painful. So to keep practicing my kata, I've changed it to this way, and it is helping me manage the injury in my knee. And I was like, wow,
Mm.
logic. So yeah,
Yeah, it is sometimes, that's again with a all those kind of traditions. I'm gonna call it sidetrack completely from what we've been talking about, but people don't ask. The Japanese culture is don't ask, right? So Sensei,
yeah,
like you said, had an injury of the knee, changed something, and people taking it as a gospel. This is the new way. That's how we're gonna be do it. Our style is better because we're doing this, but nobody asked him, "Hey, is your knee okay?" you know.
yeah,
So that's how the styles are created, right? Somebody couldn't do it. It's like when I'm teaching, I can't kick really high, so I always take my one of my instructors, Nick, and I said, kick like Nick if you can. Don't kick like
yeah,
me because my hips are shit. I can't do it. So don't copy me, copy him, right?
yeah.
Because I don't want people going in there and kicking really poorly because I can't kick, so they just don't ask and they copy me, and then we've got the really bad kicks, or maybe new better
I
kicks.
Yeah, no, I have a similar dilemma and a similar problem. As I've gotten older and I've got a few niggles and pains, I don't kick the way I used to.
Hmm.
And so it is really so, and I'm guilty of this, and that's why like it's an admission of guilt. I've gone worse than that. Instead of having one of my students kick, I just don't teach those kicks at the moment. And now my students all need to be working on those kicks. And I'm going, oh, okay, this is going to be painful. This is going to hurt a little. And then I go and teach until somebody's got the idea. And then I find that one guy and I go, right, copy him or copy her. They've got it. This is what I want. And then get that person to demonstrate because, as we get older, sometimes it becomes impossible to carry on doing what we were doing when we were 21 years old.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. Well, even if I was 20, I couldn't kick high. So just the way of hips being built. But I
Yeah.
came after 40 years, 30 years of training, I came to conclusion that it's not gonna get better. So I need to accept it.
Yeah, and if you train that long and it's not working, you got to find some other alternative.
Yeah, very true, very true. What's the plans for your dojo? What's the next big thing?
Oh, well, at this point, we're wrapping up for the year. We're hoping that in the course of next year to maybe travel back to Okinawa with a couple of the seniors in the dojo. It is grading time for a couple of the seniors, and we're hoping that they will have the great privilege for us of being able to go and to grade in Okinawa and to grade in our Hombu dojo underneath a panel of very senior people. It's the ultimate accolade, I think, in many ways for us in terms of that kind of classical and traditional upbringing. So that's probably one of the most important things that's happening in the next year. And obviously, Zoe is one of the key people who needs to go and grade.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, and she's looked and she's like, "You've done so many gradings in Okinawa and with Okinawan Sensei, and you went to Okinawa last. I want to have my turn." And these are all very justified reasons. So we're hoping that that's the next big thing for our dojo in the next year. But it's pretty much the same old thing, we just want to consistently work on trying to improve what we're doing. And so maybe we'll do a couple more seminars. If we get invited to a few more, that would be great. I've got seminars are not very common in South Africa. And when you do get seminars, then again, that whole play of the head federation interfering and you can't train at this seminar and people from here can't be involved because this one is an outsider and we don't, so there's a lot of that. England is not unique in that sense. We have a lot of the same problems here with that. In fact, I would think we're probably even worse. And so seminar circuit as such is not that big in South Africa, but we've got a couple of people that we go and we do a seminar at and try and upgrade on what our previous seminar was. And then we look at trying to adapt and to change things that we've realized in the last 18 months not working so well within our dojo, and to try and adjust and to adapt to make our dojo a little bit better and to produce a slightly better, higher quality, higher standard student every single year that the standard hopefully climbs.
Cool. That sounds like a decent plan. Good luck on the Okinawa trip and good luck on the seminar.
Yeah, no. At this point, we're still in we're thinking about it stage. We haven't got to the point where we're writing the letters yet and saying, please, this is where we're at and what we're hoping to do. Hopefully that'll happen now as soon as we've just finished 2 weeks of gradings for the majority of the students, and the highlight will be we have our black belt grading happening this Friday and Saturday in our dojo. So that will, as soon as that is over, then we can start running towards next year's planning. We have a planning meeting with our senior students. We sit around and we have planning, and then we take it from there.
Awesome. Che, thank you for your time. Always pleasure to talk to you. And I
That's
hope we
great.
can catch up soon again.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm sorry we kind of went down a couple of wormholes as we were talking. I think it's that scattered brain syndrome. I hope all
Yeah.
the people outside who are watching and going, what are these guys? I hope they can keep up with the thoughts that were happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, I'm sure they can do it. I'm sure there's lots more people like us who've got the same problem. So it's always nice to listen to somebody
I think
expressing
we're the
thoughts.
majority. We
Yeah,
are the majority.
yeah.
So
So I hope it's gonna be useful to you guys listening it. And if you've got any question, reach out to Chair, reach out to me. We always happy to help and chat. I'm putting words in Chair's mouth now, but I think that's the
yeah,
truth based on our conversation and catching up. And
yeah, no,
yeah.
that's it's easy for us. If you search hard enough, you'll eventually find a telephone number that you can WhatsApp, and that number inevitably will be Zoe's number, and then it kind of gets relayed to me. And if you're on WhatsApp, then you bounce me a voice note, and I try and answer when I get a gap.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
It is a pleasure. Thank you very much, and so Les, have a
Bye
good
now.
one.
And you.
Cheers, cheers, bye.
Bye.